You wake up, the world feels heavy before your feet even touch the ground. You stare at the ceiling, and that familiar voice returns, whispering in your mind, feeding you doubts. It says you're not enough, that you've tried before and failed, that nothing you do will ever make a difference. You lie still, paralyzed by the weight of your own thoughts. But then, something small but powerful flickers in the back of your mind. It's not loud, it's not insistent, but it's there, a tiny whisper different from the rest. It says, "What if this isn't the end? What if this is the beginning?" And suddenly you pause, you breathe. And in that breath, something shifts. You realize you've been living inside a story that you didn't write. A story handed to you by fear, by pain, by the echoes of other people's expectations. You've been stuck in a loop, telling yourself you're not worthy, not capable, not ready. But here's the truth. You are not your past. You are not your thoughts. You are not your fears. You are your potential. Look at what you've survived, the heartbreaks, the failures, the lonely nights, the times you thought you'd break, but didn't, the times you screamed in silence, hoping someone would understand. You're still here, still standing, still breathing. That's not weakness. That's resilience. You've been waiting for the right time, the right mood, the right feeling. But what if you stopped waiting? What if you chose yourself now? What if the very idea that you need to feel ready is the lie that's been holding you back? You see, growth is never comfortable, change is never convenient, but you weren't meant to stay the same. You were made to evolve. So let's begin. Not tomorrow, not next week, now today. You take your power back. You start by shifting your mind. You choose to question every thought that belittles you. You stop accepting every criticism as truth. You look into the mirror and stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" Instead, you ask, "What's right with me? What can I build on?" You become your own advocate. You speak to yourself like someone worth fighting for, because you are. When the voice says, "You always fail," you answer, "I'm learning." When it says, "You can't do it," you say, "I haven't yet." When it says, "This is who I am," you say, "This is who I was." You are not stuck. You are becoming. Every obstacle in your life is not a stop sign. It's a redirection, a lesson, a moment calling you to rise higher. And when you stop seeing setbacks as defeat and start seeing them as data, as feedback, as fuel, you become unstoppable. You start taking action, even if it's messy, even if it's uncertain, because perfection is not your goal. Progress is. You wake up and drink water, you stretch, you breathe deeply. You write down what you're grateful for. You speak words of power to yourself, not out of vanity, but out of truth, because the way you speak to yourself shapes your identity. You walk differently. You make eye contact. You set boundaries. You say no when you mean it and yes when it matters. You stop shrinking to fit other people's comfort zones. You make space for your growth, even if it makes others uncomfortable. You let go of people who drain your energy. You forgive, not because they deserve it, but because you do. You stop clinging to guilt and shame like they're badges of honor. They're not. They're weights. And you, my friend, are meant to fly. And you will stumble. You will doubt. There will be days when the old voice tries to return, dressed in new words. But now you're aware. Now you know. That voice is not truth. It's just noise. You create rituals of renewal. You read books that feed your mind. You surround yourself with people who see your light. You challenge yourself to speak up, to try again, to risk being seen. You build daily habits that align with your higher self. You begin to understand that the small things you do consistently matter more than the big things you do occasionally. You learn to trust the process. Even when results aren't instant, you know seeds take time to grow, and so do you. You stop comparing your journey to theirs. You recognize that timelines are illusions. You remind yourself that the only competition is who you were yesterday. You begin to celebrate your progress, not punish your pace. You start to feel something shift. more smiles, a little more confidence. The days don't feel lighter, but you feel stronger. And that strength, it's not about perfection. It's about showing up anyway. You rediscover joy, not the performative kind, the quiet joy, the peace that comes from alignment, the satisfaction of knowing you're living on your terms. You notice how you carry yourself, how you speak with conviction, how you no longer apologize for existing. You dive deeper, you journal, you meditate, you ask yourself hard questions, you sit with discomfort and learn from it. You don't run, you listen, because now you know healing isn't linear. Growth isn't glamorous, but it is real. You forgive yourself truly, not just in words, but in the way you treat yourself. You no longer punish yourself for past versions of you who didn't know better. You honor them because they got you here. You let your past inform you, not define you. You collect wisdom like gold. You share your journey without shame. You become a lighthouse for others who are still lost at sea. And in guiding them, you realize how far you've come. You pursue your goals with intention. You stop waiting for permission. You start writing that book, applying for that job, building that business, setting those boundaries, chasing that dream. You act because action creates clarity. You start to see your future not as a fantasy, but as an unfolding, a continuation of the story you now write with your own hands. You don't need guarantees. You just need courage. And every day you choose it again. This is how transformation happens. Quietly, slowly, powerfully. And you're it now, becoming, expanding, awakening. This is not about fake positivity. This is not about pretending everything's fine. This is about power. Your power. The one that's been there all along. And it's time to remember it. Remember who you were before the world told you who to be. Remember the dreams you buried under realism and fear. Remember the fire you felt before it got dimmed by rejection. Now, fan that flame. Let it roar. You were never meant to settle, never meant to blend in, never meant to play small. You are here to disrupt patterns, to break generational cycles, to rise not just for yourself, but for everyone who comes after you. Your growth is not selfish. It's a revolution. So get up, not just physically, emotionally, spiritually. Rise, because the world doesn't need another person just getting by. It needs you fully alive, fully engaged, fully yourself. Next time that voice tells you you're not ready, you look it in the eye and say, watch me, because you're not stuck. You're rising, you're growing, you're becoming. And the world is better for it.